Okay, so I was talking with one of my students about this recently. We were talking about cadences, and so I figured that would be after we talked about it, I figured, hey, why don't I just make a little video explaining that kind of stuff more. So cadences, very common cadences. Well, what we have is like they have very common cadences would be like the 4/1 cadence and the 5/1 cadence. Now, let's just say we're in the key of C major. So I'm just going to make the C major scale here. C, D, E, F, G, A, B, C. So there's the scale. We know C major is easy because there's no sharps or flats. And so now um, we're going to add in each one to make it them all basically triads. And to do a triad, you need the 135. So 135 and 135 for people who don't know. If we're in the C is the 1, D would be the 2, 1, 2. E would be the 3, F would be the 4, G would be the 5. You can continue going up. A would be the 6, etc. B would be the 7, and then C would be the 8, and that's why it's called an octave. Because if you go up from like C up an octave to C again, then octave because eight, octopus has 8 legs, and that's why it's called the octave. Okay, so we're doing the 135. So all we really need to do is go this far, and we can see, okay, C, if C is the 1, here's the C, then E is the 3, here's the E, then G is the 5, okay, and here's the G. So 135. Um, and so we're going to do that for all of them actually. So if we even go to this next one here, oops, next now we got D, F, A. So you got D is the 1, D, E, F, 1, 2, 3 is the F is the 3. Here's the 3, which is the F. D is the 1. And then D, E, F, G, A, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. A is the 5. Okay, so we're going to do 135 all the way up. And 135 within the key signature makes the chords within that key signature. So once I'm done doing this, we'll go through and we'll see all the names of the chords within this key signature. And we made that based off of the scale. So we just took the scale, C major scale, no sharps or flats, so it's nice and easy. And we made triads based off of the 135, and then that created the scale here for us. So we got this one here, which is C major, and then the next one is D minor. And we'll talk about why that is in a bit. E minor, F major, G major, A minor. We got B diminished. Actually, we use a circle for that, for diminished, and then back to C. I'm just going to make this a bit bigger like that. Okay, so now we can see like these are the chords that we have within within the key signature of C major. And so this would be the 1 chord, the C. This would be the 2 chord, 3 chord, 4 chord, 5 chord, 6 chord, 7 chord, and back to 1 chord or 8 chord. Okay, and it makes total sense because if C is the 1, then D is the 2, right? E is the 3. So these numbers also apply to chords as well as the notes within the chords. Because you could say like this is the if D is the 1, then the 3 is this the F and the 5 is the A, right? A, F, D. But we could also say, well, if C is the 1 this way, in terms of the 1 chord, then D is the 2 chord, and we can go this way as well, and not just in terms of how we stack it. So it's all relative to what is the 1. So so in this case, the 1, when we say the 3 is this one here, it's because we called the root note the 1. Okay, so C, D, E, F, G. So what we're doing is we're basically going to be talking the 4/1 cadences. So 4/1 is would be an F major chord. In this case, in this key signature, F major to C major. That would be a 4/1 cadence, okay? And that would be like the end. Just gonna do it on my guitar here because my piano's broken right now. So F, F, and then C. 4/1. Okay? So that's a 4/1 cadence. And then this one here, we're gonna do 5/1 cadence. So 5 will be the G, and of course the 1 is the C. And that's the one that a lot of people are really familiar with, which is 5/1. And a cadence is basically just like, it's kind of like the musical period to the end of, or comma to the end of a musical line, or to the end of the piece or something. You could even do it backwards, like if I go 5/1 cadence, a 5/1 cadence sounds like resolved, where it's like the end, right? But if you do it the opposite way, where you go from the 1 to the 5, so in this case the C to the G, then it's unresolved, okay? So it's like in the key in the song uh, that Beethoven one, Ode to Joy. He does a 5/1 cadence. Oh, sorry, not a 5/1 cadence, but he ends on the 5 here, which which means that it's unresolved. Yeah, I'm pretty sure it's a 5/1 cadence there. So let me just double check. Yeah, well, it's pretty much a 5/1 cadence there. Just the one in this case would be the A minor. A minor is what you could call it a 6/5 cadence, but essentially the A minor is the relative minor of C major. So they're kind of the same thing, and the reason why is because they share a lot of the same notes. Like here we have a C and an E and a G. And over here we have a C, sorry, we have an A, we have a C and an E. So you can see we share the C and E, C and E. Okay, and so they're relative. Plus, in the key of A minor has no sharps or flats, and C major has no sharps or flats. So they're very much connected. That's why they call them relatives. Okay, so in that case, we did a 1/5 cadence, and it left us unresolved. And then the second time we do it with 5/1 cadence, which leaves us resolved. 5/1. Okay, so 1/5. 5/1. And so a lot of musicians will use these cadences as like the first line of um, their melodic phrasing, of their melodics, of that particular section, will end on an unresolved, like 1/5 cadence, so unresolved. And then they'll do the same thing, but then they'll end the second time on a 5/1 cadence, which is resolved. Okay, so let's say 1/5, 1/2/5 equals unresolved. Okay, but if you do 5/2/1, then it equals resolved. Okay, so 5/1, or sorry, 1/5, and then 5/1. Sorry, 1/5, unresolved, 1/5, resolved. So if we put that into the song, 5/1, unresolved. And the second time through, we do a 5, 1, which is resolved. Okay, so I hope that's clear. Anyways, so you can do that in different ways. You can do that with the 4-1 cadence. The 4-1 cadence is is more of like it sounds a little more like softer, like it's a softer kind of cadence. Um, Whereas the 5-1 cadence is like this. It's like the end. It's really obvious, kind of like bold. And then the 4-1 cadence is like the end, and it's more like kind of like a little softer. They call it a bit of a softer cadence. Okay, now interesting thing about the 4-1 cadence. Well, actually, let's do the 5-1 cadence. So the 5-1 cadence, we can turn the 5. Usually, you can turn the 5s into a 5-7. So we're going to turn this into a G7. And so if 7 just means we're going to add the 7th. So if we have the 1 here, which is the G, this is the B, which is the 3. This is the D, which is the 5. And then the 7, if G is the 1, then F is the 7. So we'll add the 7 here. Because G, A, B, C, D, E, F. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Okay? So if we add a 7, 5 chords usually can be turned into a 7. And then this is called the dominant 7 because the 5 is known as the dominant in terms of music theory. You'll get into that later if you don't really know about that kind of stuff. But it's called like dominant. Um, and then this one here, the 1 is usually called the tonic. So dominant to tonic. So if you're doing the dominant, the 5 of the C major 1, then you're doing essentially, but you turn it into a 7, then you turn it into a dominant 7. Uh, so there's that F natural, which turns that 5 into a 5-7 chord and resolves to the 1 chord. You can hear how it's a little more powerful. Like here's the original one, but then here's if you put in the 7. It has a little bit more of like an energetic pull from one chord to the next, and it's mostly because the 7, this F, that is the 7, is really close to the E because the E is basically here, and they are only a distance of a semitone away. Semitone. A semitone is just basically one step away. So a tiny step away from the F to the E. Also, if a lot of this stuff isn't really entirely making sense because it's very new to you, that's okay. Sometimes it's good to just listen to things and just let it wash over your mind a bit. And you don't have to get it like straight away. But, the more we talk about it, the more it'll start to kind of click. So I'll just try to like talk about it more and more day by day. And then maybe, if you follow along, you'll just start to click and you'll just start to be like, oh, okay, that's what he's talking about. Okay, so anyways, so the 5-1 cadence is very strong, especially if you turn the 5 into a 7, a 5-7. I know there's so many weird numbers. But yeah, you're basically adding the 7 onto the 5. And that's the 7 of the 5, by the way. Because the 7 of C, the 7 of C would actually be a B. We already have that within the G. So the G, if the G is the 1, then the F is the 7. Because we're going relative of the G chord. Anyways, so I know that can be a bit confusing, but anyways, like I said, we'll just keep going here, and you just get used to, talking about this stuff and listening to this stuff, let it wash over your mind, and then little by little it'll start to make sense. So anyway, so turning the 5 chord, which is the G, 5 chord, which is the G, turning it into a 5-7 by adding that 7th note on top as if the G was the 1. Therefore, the F is the 7. And then resolving to the 1, it makes the 5-1 cadence that much stronger. Okay, now one of my favorite things with the 4-1 cadence is we're gonna go 4-1. So it has its own kind of like interesting thing going on here, which is if you do a major 4 cadence, then when you before you resolve it to the 1, what you can do is whatever the middle note is here, whatever the third is, like we got the F is the 1, is in terms of the triad, the F is the root, so it's the 1. The A is the 3, which is the next note up, and the C is the 5. So essentially we have three notes here. We have the 1 3 5, which is F A C, and so what we can do with that chord is we can take the 3, we can turn it in, we can flatten it. So we're going to say flatten the third. So I'll say third flat, which would then make this an A flat. Okay, so what we're going to do is the first time we play the chord, we're just going to play it normal. So a normal way of playing the chord would be F, A, C. And then the second time we play the chord, we're going to flatten the middle one, which is the third. So we're going to go F, A flat, C. And then we're going to resolve it to the C major chord. So here's what it would sound like if we just did F chord to C chord. It would sound like this. Right? It's still resolved. It still sounds nice. It's like a nice like a smoother kind of transition between for the resolution than the boldness, as opposed to the boldness of the 5-1 cadence. So we're doing the 4-1 cadence. 4-1. Okay, but here's where you can make it really nice. We're gonna go 4, major 4, and then we're gonna flatten the third. So we have this note now. So it basically goes here, here, and then resolves here. So instead of it going 4-1, we're gonna go 4, minor 4, 1, or 4, 4 with the flattened third, 1. And you can see that it has a really nice da 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 kind of sound to it. Da, na, 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 na. And I usually call that one the the John Lennon cadence, because John Lennon used to use that a lot in their Beatles songs. So yeah, the 4 to the minor 4 with the flattened third, 1 cadence. Now the thing is, if you're doing this with piano, should we talk about let's just get into it, whatever, we're here already. We were talking about this a bit with my student. So I'm gonna do a 4 yeah, we'll do a 4-1 cadence. 4-1. And over here we're gonna do we're gonna do a 5-1. 5-1 cadence. Okay, so this will be 4, 4 to 1. Or in other words, we could say C, oh sorry, F, I mean, F to C. And then this one will be 5 to 1, or in other words, G to C. Because C is the 1. If C is the 1, then F is the 4. If C is the 1, then G is the 5. And then we build that here. Now, I'm just going to add in the note names real quick. What is the note names? Palette. Oh yeah, I remember where. Oops. Note head. It's useful to see this stuff too, because if this program is a really useful program, so you can get by seeing me play around with the program, you can start to figure out how you can play around with the program as well and use these same things. So yeah, I went in here, pitch names, boom, and now we've got the names of the pitches. Okay, so we got the F chord here, F triad, F major triad, to the C major triad. So the 4-1 cadence. G major triad to the C major triad. 5-1 cadence. Okay, so now the thing is, if we go from this chord to this chord, it sounds nice, but it doesn't sound that like as nice as it could. So what we want to do instead is we want to be as efficient with our movement between things. So what I can do here, I'm just going to take this C and move it up here because that's a commonality between the two chords. So this C remains at this C. It doesn't jump all the way down to like down here. Okay, we don't want to jump down. We don't want to do big jumps. We want to keep them the same. And then because C is the same note between the two chords, but A moves down to G and F moves down to E. And then this is a much nicer, uh, it's a much nicer movement from chord to chord, transition from chord to chord, because, like I said, we're keeping that, we're not doing huge jumps. We're keeping that C at the top here, connected between the two. And this is called voice leading. And it was used a lot with like choirs and stuff. And the reason why is because, you know, like if you're in the choir and you're singing this C, you don't want to be like C and then C down here, because that would be like, it would just be weird. It'd be difficult for them to do. It would be like sound too like disjointed kind of thing. So they just keep, if they're going from chord to chord, they just keep it from C, and they just have them, they're going to the next chord, so they keep these people holding the same note because that note is common in both chords. So you just keep them holding that same note, and then the other people go down here and they use they just step down as well. So it's not like they're going like A and then boom jumping up to a G way up here. That would also be like an inefficient movement. So you want to keep it kind of like almost kind of lazy. You want to keep it kind of lazy in an efficient way. Okay, so that what we had before would just like root chord, root position chord in terms of inversions to root position chord in terms of inversions. But we want to keep that one here. So now we're doing like root position chord, which is then turned into, if you heard me talk a bit about this stuff in one of my last ones, uh, root position chord to first inversion, chord, okay, as opposed to root root. Anyways, we can take that out. That gets a bit into the weeds with that. So then with this one, what we can do here is we go, okay, well, what's the commonality between these two? It's this one, this G. So that commonality is already there. The problem is that this is like jumping way down to here, and this one's jumping way down to here. So it's making too big of a jump. So what we want to do again to make it more of an efficient transition is we'll move these up. And now you can see that the movement from B to C is very small, moving up a little bit. D to E, very small, moving up a little bit. And so you can see this one is more efficient over here because we keep that C, and then these ones move down a little bit, and this one moves down a little bit. And then the same with this one over here. We keep that G, we move up a little bit with the other one. Okay, and that's called voice leading. Voice leading. Okay. Anyway, so that's just a way of kind of playing around with those cadences. So remember when we were doing up here. So just a brief overview of what we were talking about. We took the C major scale, C, D, E, F, G, A, B, C, and then we created each of them. We turned each of them into a triad by adding the 1, 3, 5, 1, 3, 5 for each of them, 1, 3, 5, all the way up, etc. 1, 3, 5, and that created each of the chords. We didn't really talk about why this is a D minor as opposed to just a D major. but it has to do with the spacing between these chords. So from here to here is a minor third, and from here to here on the top is a major third. Whereas this one over here, from here to here is a major third, and this one is a minor third. We didn't talk about that. That's fine. We'll talk about that in another lesson maybe. But yeah, so we figured out the chords there. I just gave them the names of the notes. I told you why it's called the one chord, the two chord, the three chord, the four chord, etc. And then I showed you, okay, well, if we're going to go from the four here to the one, that's called a 4/1 cadence, um, also known as a plagal cadence, also known as a church cadence. Also, we could do another common one is a 5/1 cadence, and that is also known as the perfect cadence. Um, and we could turn that 5 into a 5/7 for a dominant 5 to a 1 cadence, or we could turn this 4 into a 4 with then the minor 4, which is using the A flat in the middle there, because we flatten this middle note, which is the third. We have the 1 3 5 like that. We're flattening the third, and then we resolve it to the C, and then we have that nice 4 flattened third 4, and then C major cadence. So one last time, we've got 5/1 cadence, and then 5/7 cadence, 5/7 to 1 cadence, dominant, I should call it dominant 7. Yeah, dominant 7, because they say dominant, because dominant, remember, is the fifth, so dominant 7 to 1 cadence. And then I'm going to do the 4/1 cadence, but then instead I'm going to do it as a 4, and then flatten the A third, and then resolve it to the C, to the 1. So the reason why this can be really useful is that if you understand what key signature you're in, and you understand the whole thing about cadences and how you can, make the 4 turn into a minor 4 and then drop down to the C, then there's different ways you can play around with the songs that you're given, and you just have more uh, you have more understanding of what's going on. So because of that understanding, you can connect it to your music theory knowledge, and then you can play around with it more. There's more interesting things you can do with that knowledge, as opposed to just only playing it basically like here's what it is, and then you just play it back, right? That's like base level. It's like here's what it is, and you just play it back. But if the next higher levels is here's what it is, and then you're like, I understand this pattern in how it connects with music theory in this way and that way, and I can play around with it in this way and that way. Okay? And then I just showed you here a little bit about voice leading, where you want to make the chords more uh, you want to make the chords more efficient in terms of their transitions between each other. So it's a nicer transition. So we did that here by moving the C up so that it would be connected more there. And then we did this one here by moving this E and this C up here, because then we didn't have to do that big jump down from here to here. Anyways, yeah, if you have any questions, feel free to put them in the comments and stuff like that. And again, just remember, if this didn't entirely make sense, that's all right. The fact that you watched it is really good, is because now it's kind of like you're letting the information pour over your mind, and then little by little, eventually you're going to understand it. And yeah, we'll wrap it up there. Peace.